Of course, in the Pacific Northwest, including British Columbia, parts of Washington and Oregon, the climate is wetter than much of the rest of North America, and we have wonderful rainforests. We have books on flora fauna throughout the area, books on medicinal plants and edible plants. Oops, focus that wrong. And books on coastal mountains, coastal wildflowers of British Columbia, wild harvest, edible wild plants, fruits and berries. The one tucked in the back there is Indian herbs. And this last one is entitled, sorry for the reflection, A Guide to Collecting Wild Herbs. I draw your attention to a book you might want to find somewhere if you're interested in pursuing this. It's called Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest, from Alaska to Northern California. And it was published by you always take a second to find these things. Gray's Publishing Limited, Sydney on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. Indeed, some of my collection are so old, like I am sometimes, feel that way, that they may not be in print anymore. This one is in print, I believe. C.P. Lyons and Bill Merrill's Trees, Shrubs and Flowers to Know in British Columbia and Washington. This last group of flowers that I wanted to show you, oops, I've got a few more books to show you yet. There are smaller guides. There's one called Wildflowers of Field and Slope, Wildflowers of Forest and Woodland, Wildflowers of Marsh and Waterway. I'm just going to bring you back over here. I'm going to just show you or finalize this little clip with some plants that require a long time for propagation. I usually, for an April planting, April to May 15th planting in Zone 3, I start these seeds about late January to February the 15th. Usually soaking them and doing distillation and chilling needed to set them. These particular plants require 90 days in the refrigerator after they're soaked, and then they go into peat moss and just slightly moist. I have to check regularly to make sure that there isn't any mold with them. And but once we do that little job of putting them into the peat moss and keeping and soaking them, we put them in the fridge. So native Canadian seeds. This one is a wild rose. This is the provincial rose of the province of Alberta in Canada. Here on the west coast we also have another subspecies called the Nootka rose. N-O-O-K-A. Nootka is one of the First Nations tribes on the west coast of Vancouver Island, just around Nootka Sound, actually. This is a bunchberry. This is another seed that takes propagation periods of 90 days before they're ready to be planted. So first soaking, then putting in peat moss, putting them in the fridge for 90 days, and then they can be brought out. This is a particular pretty and very popular flower in the West. It's called paintbrush, and in the old days we used to call it Indian paintbrush, but nomenclature has changed. I think that use is inappropriate now, and the folks that were first here like to be called First Nations now. So that's particularly nice. It grows in mixed dry and wet conditions, particularly at high elevations. And this final one that I'll show you is a vanilla leaf. It's a species that you'll find throughout the Northwest, and it primarily grows, close to forests, but it can be at roadsides and everywhere. Now, what I actually do is collect the seeds usually in the fall. These original packages are from ones that I started with a few years ago, and so I collect the seeds and dry them and store them, overwinter them, and then propagate them when they're to be done, and then I have the nicest garden to attend in the whole world. I go just out into the forest or the paths or onto wild lands, and I just plant these seeds that I've propagated, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I usually put in a mix of plants that prefer dry soils, and some that prefer wet soils, and some that prefer high elevation, some close to the coast, and then I go back the next year and the year after to see what's come and what seeds that I might harvest. Thank you.